So the other day I popped the hood to check the oil before going on a trip and discovered that my hood spring on the driver's side had come completely off, dislodged itself. Don't know why, no reason. But getting it back on was going to prove to be a challenge. I have to turn this over 180 degrees to get it to go back on that post and on that retainer. Tried it first the easy way, which was only about 90 degrees, but it did not hold the hood up. So here's what I found. So to do this, remove that bolt and that nut and take the entire assembly over to the workbench and the vise. Now, one thing I forgot to mention is to do this job you're going to need to make a tool. Now, what I did is I started off with a stainless steel compression fitting of a popular manufacturer. This is a 3/8 tubing compression union, and I took the nuts off and then took a pencil wheel and cut a slot so it'll fit over the spring. You'll see that in just a second, the way it fits on there. But you'll need to make that. This particular one is going to take a 5/8 inch socket, and then I'll use that to wind the spring back up on the vise, and I'll show you that here just now. Okay, so you'll see that there's a piece of safety wire on here. The reason for that is we had an event just a minute ago when trying to film this earlier where the custom tool that I made broke and the spring went flying, and it took me an hour to find in my dirty shop. Cluttered, not dirty. Anyway, so this will prevent any further catastrophes. And you can see that I've got my custom tool here. I'm going to cut the other side of it so I can do the job. And I've got it taped into the socket to make it a little easier to deal with. So I'm going to put that on that spring, keep it back from the crook here just a little bit so that I can get it latched into the holder. And I'll put the handle across the axis of the pivot point here, and that will put less sideways force on the spring as I start to turn it. And then we should be able to latch it right into this holder here. Hopefully this wire doesn't get in our way. But come right around and latch it in. Just like that. Undo the safety wire, and it can slip right back out of the spring. And I kept this down in the vise just a little bit so I didn't have something for that to catch on. And then right up as close as I could to the stop here so that I had as much meat as I could grab onto there as I could. So now this may not be perfectly seated flush, so what I'm going to do is take that out, and I'll just run it in here like this. You can see on the back side here there's just a little gap, so we're going to just press that in just gently, and now it's seated and ready to install. Okay, so the installation goes just like it did when it came out. Probably put this bottom one in first, seems like the most logical. And these screws have a land on them here, so you can see that's where the actual pivot action takes place for this spring assembly. And these bolts are 13mm, by the way. Just make sure that you get the spring assembly on that land and that you don't use that shoulder to squish into the spring assembly. And then this one here is the same kind of deal, except that that shoulder goes into the hood bracket. Make sure that it's firmly seated. You might have to move your hood just a little bit to get it in there, and then tighten down the nuts. And that way you have a completely reassembled hood spring assembly. You still got all your teeth. Thanks.